But first of all, in order to inform the Minister and at least give him some sense of what things have been about today, Andy, will you summarise the day on behalf of the group?
I will try, but given there has been a...
I will open it up for questions or comments thereafter, so that don't feel that Andy's trying to be comprehensive. Over to you.
Okay, Minister. What we went into this morning at 10:30 was really to do, as I said, to do four things. As I said at the beginning, one of our concerns has been that this debate has been very politicised, polarised in recent times. And so one of the things was, how do you create a more constructive engagement in this space, which means getting people around the table to explore what needs to be done. And so if there were three things that we wanted to do today, one of which was to raise awareness of the mechanisms and processes for constructive engagement. And that's what John did this morning. And in fact, behind him is the little protocol that we were coming to, he was working towards in terms of what we should be doing to engage more effectively. And it is difficult. You know, if you've got passionately held views, and people in this room have passionately held views, then we have to stop and think sometimes. About being inclusive, about listening to other views, and also in particular to the silent majority who by definition aren't here. The notion that we are time limited and that there is only a limited amount of time that we can commit to any one of these types of participatory processes, but we do need to participate to carry forward the common ground. The notion that we shouldn't be taking questions as criticism, that actually that's the way in which we'll take it forward, but we need to frame and tone the questions correctly. The need for respect of different views, even if we don't share them. And also the need to challenge and be open with our assumptions, and we all carry them, we all carry our little package of social and cultural assumptions, and actually being able to challenge those. So that was really the first hour, was really just looking at different ways of engaging, and that was the aim of that. And I have to say, certainly in my group, we had a very constructive engagement. There was nobody punched anybody, nobody threw anything. It was great. So there were different views, and they were held positively and they were held passionately, but they were delivered in that format. So that was the first thing we wanted to do. The second one was just to try and tease apart some of these issues, that too often we're getting statements along the line of, you know, we hate wind, or it should just be nuclear, or if only there was more gas, we'd be fine. And it was just trying to tease apart some of those issues to find out what is it that actually underpins that. And we tried it in the morning by just looking almost by technology type and say, what are the attributes, what are the issues that matter? Is it noise, is it emissions, is it air pollution, and so on. But actually people were very much saying, look, this is too much of a static view. Actually, we live in a much more dynamic world, and a lot of the debate that we are having is about future costs or future impacts or future issues, and those are, by their nature, unknowable. You know? And therefore, one of the issues that we need to resolve is how do we make more transparent the information, the evidence, the data that goes behind that, and the processes of decision making. Because that way we're not going to get people to agree with each other, but at least if it's more transparent how we got to what the decisions are made, that should help the process. So I think there was very much a strong sense that that was at least the outputs from my subgroup, and we'll collate some of the other ones as well more coherently into some feedback later. So I think that was the sort of the stage we were at the lunchtime. So we'd had a discussion. It had been a very, very carefully constructed discussion to try and tease out some of these issues. This afternoon, we've just had an hour or so, which is a much more open discussion about what are our priorities for an energy system. An energy system is very difficult to design, which will hit every single priority, which hits energy poverty alleviation, that hits community needs, that hits low cost, that's energy secure, and so on. They're very challenging. And so what we've tended to see, and certainly again the feedback that I've just given to this group before the Minister came in, you know, that we very much felt that, you know, the current energy system tends to tag on at the back side something about energy poverty alleviation or about community ownership, and it's not embedded. And the question is, how do you take that forward? That last session, where you've just heard the feedback from three of us, and you know, again, we'll write these up and pass those back to you. But I think there's a very strong message both about information availability, about the need for transparency and information, about the understanding that you can create or you can look at the evidence base and get a very consistent view of the evidence base, but people will still interpret the data in different ways. And therefore there isn't going to be one answer to many of these issues, and the way in which we perceive the issue will matter. So actually, again, trying to make this more transparent is important. Certainly from our perspective, I think the other thing that came through in our group, and it came through in a couple of the other groups, was the need to both think about heat and transport as much as electricity. That electricity has gained a huge issue around, particularly around onshore wind, but actually if you look at the energy needs of Scotland as a whole going forward, then some of the bigger issues are to do with our inflexibility of our energy system around transport and about heat. And particularly if we're importing and therefore at the mercy of international markets, about the prices of these commodities, and that's a huge issue going forward for individuals and communities. So we need to be very, very aware that if we're going to shape our energy future more effectively, we do need to join up demand and supply, we need to join up heat and electricity, and think much more around the way transport is being integrated into this energy system as well. So those are the sort of typical comments that came back. What we're intending to do now is to write up the feedback that we got from those groups. After I've given a chance for the Minister to speak and just make some comments and thoughts after hearing what I've said, what we're going to do is just think about the next steps. What is the next steps that will constructively take this forward? He says, splitting an infinitive. What are the things that we can do? There was particular topics around wind about things like compensatory payments. That's something that we can actually just dig into in a lot more detail about what would be required, what is appropriate. What about the issue about integrating heat and electricity? Is that something else that we can dig into to explore, given the regulatory framework, given the market framework, given the government framework that we have at the moment? How do we tie that more closely together? And similarly, in the medium term, about transport. So there are things we can start to look to do in terms of positive next steps that we'll do. But in the meantime, I'm going to just pass back and say that's mine.